Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, before I ask how you're doing, we just saw Ohio State's first spring practice of the year, and I am already going to say it. Looked like a national championship team, but hey, how are you doing?
Good. I got to watch Ohio State's first spring practice of the year, and
8-4?
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
I'll say I wasn't too terribly impressed with the quarterbacks until they got better, and then I was impressed with them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's spring, especially the first practice.
I feel like going back to the Tressel era, you would go through the entire spring and go, oh, they're not going to be able to get a single first down all season. And some years that was true, but a lot of years it wasn't.
At least, like, the only time they would get first downs in the spring would be throwing to the tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when you knew this is the year of the tight ends.
Yes. I saw Luke Farrell had a nice morning this morning. So
he had a nice catch down the seam. Cade Stover had at least 4 catches.
Mm-hmm.
But so let's talk about what we saw. And what we did see was the entire 2-hour practice. Some of us, meaning you, saw more than others, meaning me, because I, was a little late. But we're not here to point fingers or blame anybody or say somebody's working harder than somebody else, because, Tom, we're both here right now working just as hard as each other.
Mm-hmm. I mean, right now.
Right
yes.
now.
Right now, at this exact moment.
That's what I'm saying. So maybe we should just start from, like, quarterback on down and just make it easy. Justin Fields is the starter. I think it's safe to say.
He was repping with the ones a lot today, which, you never know how much to read into something like that. I feel pretty confident saying that if healthy, he's probably the starter this year.
All right. He's going to have to show that over these next 14 practices. And then behind him, Gunnar Hoke. What's the other kid's name?
CJ?
Stroud. What?
Jack Miller.
There's too many CJs. And I was going to say CJ Saunders. No, that can't.
Nope.
He's only going to be like the future of the program. I should get to know his name.
You should probably. That's probably one to write down.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
Maybe.
There's another kid coming in 2021, Tom.
That's Kyle McCord.
Exactly.
And
I know
you should
that
also.
I do.
You also should know.
Anyway, let's start the show over. So CJ Stroud and Jack Miller and Gunnar Hoke basically rolling through with the 2s. And Day said afterwards that at some point this spring they'll be rolling through with the 1s. Just because Justin Fields doesn't need a lot of work right now. And they're not putting in game plans right now. Mm-hmm. They're just getting reps and getting understanding of the offense. And since he has the best understanding, then you let those other guys through, because that's the real competition at quarterback this spring and this season is the backup. And so you let them all get even reps with everybody, with the 2. And sometimes that third guy going through with the 2s is throwing 2 walk-ons, and so they're not going to look as good. Mm-hmm. But you rep that way all spring long, and everybody gets the same work with the good guys, the medium guys, the less than medium guys. And so that's where they are right now. I thought everybody had good moments. I mean, Gunnar Hoke had a beautiful pass down deep to Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who we could talk about later.
Yeah, we'll get to him. I know you can't wait to... Every year the question is who is going to be the hype train guy this year, and they should just change his name to Jaxon Smith Choo Choo, because I think
he's really good.
He might be the guy. But wait,
no, exactly. That's why we have to go in order. That way we don't just And so everybody had moments. Like I said, it wasn't early on. It wasn't great, but people were connecting, and for me, I saw more stuff downfield with Gunnar Hoke than the other 2 quarterbacks who were maybe doing more checkdowns or not seeing guys and having to take off. Although CJ Stroud had some moments, but like nobody is behind. Remember last year, like Matthew Baldwin where his football was just different, and he was like, he's a little behind, especially when you compare him to Justin Fields and the trajectory of their throws.
Yes.
I didn't see any, there's a drop off, with these 3 guys.
Right. They did the 1-inch drill at one point, and so you'd see Justin Fields kind of zipping it, and sometimes he hit the screen, and if you don't remember the 1-inch drill, they set up basically like a big screen like they put up on the field for, batting practice at baseball games, and the quarterbacks are trying to throw the ball 1 inch over that screen, because it's, you're imagining that's a leaping linebacker or something. and you don't want to loop it over him because then the safety can get there. You want to get it just over that screen. And Justin Fields hit it sometimes, but he also would get it 2 or 3 inches over that screen. Some of the other, the younger guys, it's like, yeah, okay, that was about an 18-inch drill, not a 1-inch drill. But, they're sort of being cautious and learning, and there's plenty of time from practice number 1 in the spring till practice number 15 in the spring. And even then, there's a whole bunch of time after that before they have to do anything that really means anything.
Yeah, I like watching that drill. Ryan Day brought that with them to Ohio State, and you see the guys who are confident, and you see the other guys who are just like, I have to make sure I get it over. And that's not the point of the drill. The point of the drill is to basically just exactly 1 inch over, just as we've seen with Evan Spencer in 2000 to Michael Thomas. Now, he didn't do that drill, but that's just right out of the fingertips, over the fingertips of the defender. And so they're working on that today. Anything else from the quarterbacks?
I saw both. I mean, you mentioned both of them scrambling. They both look pretty athletic.
Yeah.
You don't have a statue back there. Miller had a couple runs that were, just kind of like
the play
broke down, and they blow it dead if anyone gets
defender,
within 5 yards of the quarterback. But
he was already, past like where the linebackers would be.
Yeah, I mean, he had a couple where it was like, probably would have been a first down. Stroud had at least one pass that was like, oh, okay. Like you can sort of start to see it a little bit. And this is all guys who are very raw right now. There's a long way to go before you go from where you are when the first day of spring practice as a freshman to where Justin Fields is right now. But you look at CJ Stroud and it's like, yeah, okay, I can see in there somewhere this, what made him a 5-star prospect.
He had I think maybe it might have been the last throw of the day, down in the corner to DeMario, probably a 20-yard post route touchdown. Perfect throw over a walk-on corner. DeMario came down with it on the sideline, touchdown. And then DeMario dunked the ball on the defensive back's head, which the defensive back did not appreciate. And then CJ and DeMario, run and jump up and collide together, and they celebrate. So that was a really nice throw from Stroud. Really nice catch from DeMario, who is with the receivers right now, but Day said that they can move him back to running back at any point if they want to, because he can do that. The running back situation, Tom, if we're done with the quarterbacks.
Yep.
2 healthy running backs in Master Teague and Steel Chambers. 2 healthy scholarship running backs. You still have Xavier Johnson, who was a 3-star recruit, who was a walk-on from Cincinnati. You've got another walk-on in there as well. The move of DeMario to receiver, and we'll get into that, but Teague and Chambers looked fine today. There's really only so much running that gets done. There's no tackling. There's no pads. They do run the ball, but it's all 2-hand touch, and then the whistle gets blown. So I think the spring anyway is where they throw the ball more than anything, because there's no reason to get anybody hurt by running the ball, and they're just figuring stuff out. You get so many new receivers now, you need to be throwing the ball a bunch anyway.
Yeah, and there is such an emphasis on not getting guys hurt and limiting contact in the spring. There's so many drills that I feel like 20 years ago when you watched a spring practice, they would be taking guys to the ground, and now you have, the people who are on the mic kind of on the PA just saying, stay up, stay up, stay up, stay up. We probably heard that 30 times today if we heard it once. And that's all part of the, continued keeping guys healthy, keeping guys safe, avoiding contact, avoiding the little dings with your helmets and all that kind of stuff. And there are a certain number of padded and unpadded practices. Today was an unpadded practice, so it's just, no shoulder pads. The football pants are like cut off, so they're like jorts almost. They're like football jorts. So it was just a bunch of like never nudes out there, like Tobias.
I think they can't have pads until the 4th practice.
Yes, I think there's at least 3 or 4 where they can't have pads. So no thigh pads in the pants. So you're going to have less contact in those drills anyway. But when they're doing tackling drills now, someone's holding out a tackling pad and they're like running up and wrapping up the tackling pad instead of wrapping up a walk-on. So that's a big point of emphasis, and that's,
those pads are expensive though.
Those pads are expensive, yes.
So,
but yeah, that's a big point of emphasis, and that has sort of changed what these practices look like in a lot of cases. But, I think as we saw last year, if the fundamentals of tackling are sound, it was a very good tackling team last year, and they ran practices the same way. Yeah. So I'm sure there's the guys who were taking salt tablets at football practice in the 1970s who are going to be, the back in my day, but the results on the field looked like a team that practiced tackling, and they're practicing the fundamentals of tackling just without actually hitting it.
Well, and remember like a few years back when they essentially went to two-hand touch in the spring game, and you're like, I paid $5 for this? This is bullcrap. We paid for blood. And they did not get any blood. Marcus Crowley is out for the spring. He'll be back in the summer. Should we just talk about or mention who all is out this spring with the availability report? Do you have that?
Yeah, sure. We can do that. We got
get that out of the way.
We got an availability report partway through practice after I had spent a decent amount of time writing down like who was out and who was limited. Guys who are out this spring: wide receiver Cameron Babb, running back Marcus Crowley, offensive lineman Gavin Cupp, safety Josh Proctor, and H receiver CJ Saunders.
And Josh Proctor is jogging around the field today.
Yes. Guys who are limited, which means guys who we probably saw in some drills, but not all drills. Some of them we didn't see at all today. Quarterback Cameron Brown, linebacker Baron Browning, defensive end Jonathan Cooper, H receiver Jalen Gill, safety Ronnie Hickman, defensive lineman Jaden McKenzie, defensive tackle Teron Vincent, cornerback Sean Wade. Now, there are some guys on that list who we did see out there.
I saw Wade. I saw Vincent. I think I saw Ronnie Hickman out there as well.
Yeah, I saw Ronnie Hickman out there.
I saw McKenzie in drills.
Yeah. So you saw Teron Vincent out in some drills. So, there has been progress with a lot of these guys. Hickman and Vincent missed all of last season. So just seeing them out there a little bit was like, okay, this represents progress.
It's unfortunate that Cameron Babb, and we can move to the receivers now and just start there. Cameron Babb still can't go, and Mickey Marotti said that he was full go in workouts last month, or not last month. It would have been January now because here we are in March. But said he was full go, and now he's still not. I mean, he's out there, he's dressed, but he was dressed last fall,
right?
In practice, and I don't know if they're just so concerned about not having him or doing more damage, or, he has to be injured, like seriously, or I don't know, seriously, but truly injured, or else they'd have him in the spring because they need to get him work. He needs to get work. And so to not have him, who knows what it is. And we won't hear from Ohio State about what it is because, well, I'm not going to complain about their policies, Tom. You can go ahead and complain about their policies if you want.
I will say that Cameron Babb is one of 3 players listed as number 7 right now. Cameron Babb and CJ Stroud are both number 7 on offense, which one of those things is going to have to change before the fall. Yeah. And so, there's a decent chance maybe that they're being extra cautious with him because he's had multiple knee injuries. Is this 3 or 2?
I think it's 3, 1 in high school, 2 in college.
Yeah, I think that's right. So they may just be extra cautious and doing extra rehab and doing everything they can before they put him back on the field. But yeah, he's someone I was hoping to get to see a little bit this spring, but it sounds like that's not going to happen.
No, and this time last year we talked about Garrett Wilson as a Z or maybe in the slot. He ended up at X because we're stupid and we didn't know any better.
But the thinking has caught up to us. Finally.
And he was in the slot today, and from Ryan Day's talk afterwards that this is where they see him now because that's what his skill set is, because he's a guy who can catch the ball and then make a move quickly, gets the ball in. He's got the spatial awareness that Ryan Day likes in that position, like basketball players, and they know where everybody is. And that's what he does. He can still high point the ball. He can still go deep. And so that's where they put him. And now he can go back outside easily, just as Demario McCall can go back to running back. But I wouldn't say, was it a surprise? Yes, because he was so established last year outside. Does it make sense? I also think it makes sense. But you've got to have somebody step up at X. And I think today I saw Julian Fleming, I saw Elijah Gardner, there's G. Scott. So there are one career, Jalen Harris as well. So there's 5 career catches at that spot.
Well, and you saw Jalen Harris at the Z position a couple times too. And you have guys moving around so much that you can't read too much into where guys are repping. Ryan Day happened to specifically address the Garrett Wilson at H thing, which makes that a little more real. But yeah, you saw Elijah Gardner start. At one point, Elijah Gardner was running with the ones at X. Jalen Harris was running with the ones at Z. It was like, wow, this is interesting. And it was like, hey, where's Chris Olave? And Chris Olave was not practicing today. Yeah. And I don't think that's even so serious that he didn't even make the availability report. So, I think that's extremely not a serious thing is how I would read that. But
yeah, you would think if it was serious, there would have been made mention of, our top receiver, there's something wrong. And and remember, they have 2 practices and then they go on spring break. They may have a Saturday practice, I don't know, because it's not listed on the practice schedule.
Yeah.
They go from 2 to 4, I believe, in terms of the list. But then they're on spring break for a week or so, and there's no reason to, these 2 days are almost, I don't want to say they're a waste.
Well, it's a great opportunity for the new guys to sort of start getting up to speed and figure out when they say mini field, where do I go? That kind of stuff. Yeah, I walked in and turned to Caroline Rice and said, we could write up a nice practice report that just says Sean Wade, Chris Olave out with injuries and just make everyone panic. But they were both. Neither of them looked life-threatening, so I think they'll probably be okay.
Yeah, there were no medics surrounding them.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it was...
asking for pints of blood or anything that.
No, it was...
Clear!
You have so much that you see at these, and it's like, well, how much of this is real, and how much of this is... Like last year, I very clearly remember watching Taraja Mitchell repping with the ones, and going, wow, and it's like, hey... Where are Baron Browning and Tuff Borland? And they're both out with extremely minor injuries.
Let's talk about what's real on the inside at that slot receiver.
Yeah.
Because you have Garrett Wilson, you have DeMario McCall, CJ Saunders, they're still waiting to hear about that 6th year, but he's also out. Jaxon Smith-Njigba, Jalen Gill is iffy right now. Mm-hmm. So it's basically, was there anybody else who was... There was those 3, right? It was just McCall and Wilson and Smith-Njigba.
Yes.
And let's just talk about Jaxon Smith-Njigba because he caught everything except for the one pass that nobody's going to catch as he's falling out of bounds, getting hit. He's got one hand on it. He had it a couple of times and it finally came out as he's getting hit, and I believe there was a flag on the play. But he was catching stuff in traffic, down the sideline, deep. He was getting open deep. He looks like he was doing what Garrett Wilson did last year, just catching stuff on the sideline, making defenders look silly, and that he's impossible not to notice, just as Garrett Wilson was. And I think he's going to be right up there. And if Garrett Wilson and Jaxon Smith-Njigba are your starting H's this year, I think you could see something similar to when Paris Campbell and KJ Hill had 163 catches combined in 2018.
18, yeah.
I don't think they'll have that many because a lot of it was the handoffs to Paris Campbell. But, hey, you want to throw those 2 out there right now, and I think you're set. You're okay on the inside.
Yeah, there was... No one I was more impressed with today than Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Mm-hmm. I just had kind of running notes in my phone because you're not supposed to tweet during practice. Yes. You're just kind of keeping notes. And I was shooting photos, so I was keeping notes on my phone. And I just have Jaxon Smith-Njigba good catches, comma. Another close one. That was the one that landed at our feet that was uncatchable, but he almost caught it anyway. 9 route for touchdown. Big gain in 7-on-7. It's just and I don't think I have more than 2 notes on any single receiver other than him. It was just again and again and again. Who's that? Oh, okay. No. Is that Austin Mack? No. Wait, nope. It's a new guy wearing number 11.
I'm telling you, he is the guy that we're going to probably name this podcast after, just as we did with Garrett Wilson last year. At least this episode, rather. Did you see the deep ball to Jameson Williams?
I did, yes. Yeah, he's fast.
He is fast. Was that Gunnar Hoke who threw that?
I believe that was Gunnar Hoke, yeah.
And now, granted, he was going against a couple of walk-on defensive backs, but he'll be able to do that against scholarship backs as well. But basically, it was just a 9 route. And when he caught it, he had about 7 or 8 yards, I think, on the nearest defender. And it's just fun to watch him work like that. And that's not even like getting the ball after like a 6-yard screen or something and then doing something with that. I think he's going to be another explosive guy. Moving, like if you've got Olave and Jameson Williams as your Z, I think you're okay there.
Yes.
The X, be it, then you've got to like anybody else. Just go ahead and like 2 guys step up, and you've out of the 6 guys, 4 or 5 guys, be it Jalen Harris, Elijah Gardner, Julian Fleming, G. Scott, Cameron Babb. If you can get 2 guys, or even just 1, because really they played with 5 receivers last year, and 2 tight ends and 3 tight ends, and so if it's a matter of they only have really 1 X, kind of like they only had 1 H last year, you can work around that by putting. Like Garrett Wilson can play H sometimes, he can play X sometimes. And then you've got Jaxon Smith-Njigba as the other. So they've got some guys that they can move around, but I like what the possibilities at the Z. I like the possibilities at the H. It's that X. And if it's, you've got G. Scott, you've got Julian Fleming and Fleming could be a Z, he could be whatever. But if those are 2 of the options, like, you could do worse than those 2 guys, but you maybe don't want to start both of them in that rotation. But, best guys.
You don't want to start the season with, like, 3 true freshmen in your 6 receiver rotation. I mean, it's fine if you end up the year that way.
Right.
That's just something that, it's a position where you don't generally hit the ground running from day one and just immediately you're an impact. Like, last year, Garrett Wilson, you didn't see a whole heck of a lot of him until garbage time the first couple weeks. And then it's like, oh, he had the big catch against Nebraska. Okay, that was also when the score was like 38-0. But he sort of slowly worked his way into it. Chris Olave didn't really do much until late November. Go back to David Boston. David Boston, you saw him when it was 65-0 against Pitt. Like, yeah, sure, that's great. But it took until middle of the season of 1996 before he was really, and at the end of the year, he scores the game-winning touchdown in the Rose Bowl.
And dynamite reference to something that happened 25 years ago that I'm sure everybody still remembers.
I think people probably, if you're listening to this podcast, I think it's probably better than 50-50 you remember David Boston.
Yes.
There is a role there for those guys, and I think they will kind of grow into those roles. The other thing is, if they're not thrilled with their options at X, if they, look at, they don't, you don't just get recruited to Ohio State just to play X and that's it. You walk in the door as an X and you stay at X and that's it. If they have 3 Zs that they're happy with, they can slide one over to X and that's just fine.
Well, and they had an X in Garrett Wilson, and so they moved him. So you would think like, okay, they must feel pretty good about their options. And like I said, they also feel good about being able to move Garrett Wilson right back. And then you've got Jaxon Smith-Njigba and Demario McCall or Jalen Gill. And that's why I'm not sure everybody stays on the inside once the season starts, assuming Jalen Gill steps up, assuming, does CJ Saunders
gets a 6th year?
You're talking, and then there's a question of, well, but would he transfer to go play somewhere else and play more? But you're also talking about a guy who's possibly going to be a captain, play for a national title, will play. There's a lot of reason for him to stay rather than the reason to go would be to play more.
Yeah.
So there's just depends on what he wants. And you'd think being at Ohio State this long, what's one more year?
Right. And he has not played a ton, and he did not play a ton, and he was still elected a captain last year. So if you have a chance to be a 2-time captain and potentially be a player on the team this year, and even if that's only a few hundred yards receiving, being a two-time captain, potentially getting a chance to play for a national championship, win a 4th consecutive Big Ten championship. Like, that sounds pretty good.
A 6th pair of gold pants.
Oh, man.
Would that be a group of one, a club of one?
That might be a club of one. I'm trying to think of who else would have gotten a 6th year. I mean, first of all, you go like who? Winning 6 years in a row is one thing. And that's happened a lot recently. I'm not sure.
True. Yeah. It usually happens like every year, basically, where it's the 6th year in a row. Let's move to tight ends if that's okay.
Sure.
Cade Stover is now at tight end after spent so much time in the offseason talking about his move from linebacker to defensive end, which was great. So they moved him to tight end. Cormonte Hamilton, who was a tight end they signed last year, has moved to defensive tackle, which isn't a huge surprise when you consider that Cormonte Hamilton is about 6'2". That's what he's listed at, which means he's 6'1". You can't really expect to have a productive or a meaningful 6'1" tight end just because it doesn't happen. I mean,
yeah.
Who was the last one, Tom? The last 6'1" tight end at Ohio State? It was Zach Boren, just because they don't have a fullback at Ohio State, probably.
I'm going to say John Lumpkin and hope you don't remember that he played basketball.
Yes, he was a little bit taller than 6'1", in fact. So that decision makes sense, but it's like, well, why? You knew he was this tall when you signed him.
Yeah.
But he was also, other schools liked him as a defensive lineman as well, so you get this big athlete, you bring him in, you see what happens. You see what happens with Alex Williams. If it doesn't pan out, no harm, no foul, because they'll eventually move on, and then you just replace them. And so that's where they are. Cade Stover had like I said, a number of catches today. Jeremy Ruckert was out there. Jake Hausman was out there. Luke Farrell had a nice catch down the seam. They're deep again at tight end. They'll have Joe Royer, right?
Yes, Joe Royer comes in over the summer.
In the summer, who they like as well. And, there was talk about would they sign 2 tight ends this season in 2020. They didn't. Will they do it in 2021? We'll see, but they've got Cade Stover in case they don't. But you're going to lose Luke Farrell and Jake Hausman after this year, so.
You might lose Jeremy Ruckert after this year, too.
And so there's a reason that you want to kind of increase those bodies, and so that's where they are. They talked about Cade Stover a little bit and how, even with Hamilton, it was the player's decision to move. They bring the subject to the player and be like, hey, would you be for this? And as Day said, every player wants to see the field sooner. And when you present them with the way to get that done, then usually they're for it.
Yeah, it's up to the players, but they ask the question in a way that they know what the answer is going to be before they ask the question.
Yes.
That tells me that Ryan Day is probably a pretty good parent, too.
Son, do you want to play this year? Yes. Have you ever heard of defensive tackle?
Yeah, that's something that it's a great way to get buy-in, and it seems like that might be a better spot for both of them. And Cormonte Hamilton just was he's big. I mean, he's 240 something? No, 260 something.
He's listed as 6'2", 263, and he's probably heavier than that now.
Yeah, I mean, that is a blocking tight end, not a receiving tight end. And Cade Stover is, he played running back in high school. He played running back and safety in high school. So
rushed for like 1,500 yards, Mr. Football in Ohio. So, I mean, he's experienced playing offense.
Yeah, he knows what to do with the ball in his hands. And again, they talked about like good balance and good awareness and good spatial awareness. And
by the way, the last 6'1" tight end at Ohio State just came to me, JT Moore, who was a defensive lineman when he came here.
There you go.
And you know what? They moved him to tight end, as you said, like the third blocking tight end.
Yeah.
And that's basically what would you become. We better get to the offensive line. The biggest story there, Harry Miller at left guard, as we've been suggesting would happen.
As everyone figured would probably be the case.
With the ones, but was also at center in other, with the 2s and 3s and at least the 2s. So Ryan Day said he can handle both, and he's going to be Pat Elflein and Billy Price, where you are the starting left guard, but you are also the backup center. You won't necessarily be listed as the backup center on the depth chart, but wink, wink, if something happens to Josh Myers, Harry Miller is sliding over. And, that was the situation with him. I don't think anybody is worried about him. Like, we've been talking about him as if he's a starter,
right,
since probably since November.
And Ryan Day talked about him and basically said, I think he could have started last year. You don't really want to have a true freshman starting on the offensive line, so in that way, it's good that he didn't. But I don't think anyone would have been particularly worried if Harry Miller started last year. He's someone who, when he was still in high school, people talked about him as like, oh yeah, he could start as a freshman, and it would not be a surprise at all. And then he last year probably could have started as a freshman. Was repping with the second team as a center from practice number 1.
Yeah.
So it was like, not a big surprise that that's where he ended up and that's where he is now. And yeah, he's very much on that Pat Elflein, Billy Price, play a year or two at guard and then go over and win the Remington Award at center.
Yeah, because remember, Josh Myers was thinking about leaving after last year. So this very well could be his last year at Ohio State, and then Harry Miller steps in for maybe 2 years, or who knows? They leave so quickly now.
Yeah.
The other thing on the offensive line, Nicholas Petit-Frere was with the ones at right tackle. Day was asked about Paris Johnson. They were about Paris Johnson also getting in there at right tackle, and kind of inferring that the two players are competing to start, and really that's not what Day had to say. Like, yeah, if Paris Johnson is the best of one of the five best, they'll start, but this is more of, he's like the number 2 right tackle, or
Yeah, that doesn't seem like that's a position battle yet.
Right.
It could be, and he could earn his way there, and he's someone else that you'll also hear people talk about with, the guy who has a potential to be a pretty early starter. It doesn't sound like Brian Day is necessarily thrilled at the idea of having a true freshman starter on that offensive line. So just based on that, and based on the fact that they've got Nicholas Petit-Frere, they've got DeJuan Jones. I mean,
was he the number 2 at left tackle?
DeJuan Jones was number 2 at left tackle behind Thayer Munford. So, yeah, and there's no reason to rush. They have you don't have to rush the true freshman 5-star offensive tackle prospect. You have a redshirt sophomore 5-star offensive tackle prospect ahead of him. It's fine. The guy on the other side of the line has been a starter for a few years now, and so there's no huge rush. And if he can, if Munford goes after this year, then you've got DeJuan Jones. He's a senior, so yes, I mean, maybe he'll stay. I don't know.
I'm not going anywhere.
Squatters' rights inside the program. Yes. When Munford goes this year, if Nick Petit-Frere goes next year, you have DeJuan Jones, Paris Johnson right there. Max Ray was also out there. He repped with the 2s at points today, 2s and then 3s, just kind of depended on.
Yeah, some at right tackle, I believe.
Yes, he was at right tackle. Yep.
Anything else on the offensive line? Because we got to get over to the defensive line.
I think that's the big stuff.
One of the things I wanted to see on the defensive line was the 2 freshmen early enrollees in Jacoby Cowan and Darian
Henry Young.
It's like once you add another last name, then you start to confuse things. Darian Henry Young. I wondered, would they be a defensive tackle or defensive end? They were both at defensive end because they've dropped weight. They're skinnier than I expected, and the workouts have taken their toll in terms of they've dropped bad weight, and now they're going to end up putting on good weight. But so that's where they were. Cromartie Hamilton was on the inside, though Day said he could possibly play end. Those are really the 2 big question marks. Teron Vincent was out there as well playing, so that was good to see. Haskell Garrett and everybody else, Tommy Togiai. Not a really deep group of defensive tackles and nose tackles yet, but then we've been spoiled. Like, who plays 3 nose tackles or 4 nose tackles like Ohio State has? So that's not normal. Basically, if you've got 2 guys at each position, that should be enough. And they have that. Assuming like Antoine Jackson as the second nose tackle perhaps, or Jerron Cage. Because I think they're okay with Haskell Garrett and Teron Vincent at the 3 tech. And we know they're okay with Tommy Togiai, but then you just got to get somebody behind him perhaps. But then, how much are they going to even be playing all, 2 defensive tackles at the same time in terms of the rush men and things like that. But I think they still want to be deeper there.
Yeah, and we saw a whole mixture of formations on defense today. There's a bunch of 4 linebacker, which, we saw some last year. And
well, how else are you going to defend all the throws to the tight ends in the spring?
Yeah, often did not go great when you saw it last year. We saw a bunch of that this year. So, and, they've talked about playing more nickel, and, you're going to see a whole bunch of different stuff in the spring that you never see again in the fall. Like that is a spring specialty, is watch a practice and go, wow, they're really doing a lot more with this position, this formation, and then you never ever see it again.
Like last spring, I think the bullet would start out as a Sam, then on passing downs go back to play a deep safety with the other deep safety. And I don't know if we ever saw that once during the season because it was just Pete Werner.
I don't think we did.
Who sometimes would rotate in the back, but was it wasn't like that. Speaking of Pete Werner, they said they're moving him around right now just to see. There's no Baron Browning, so we still don't know if Baron Browning and Tough Borland are playing the same spot or will play next to each other. But then it was Tough Borland in the middle. I think it was Pete Werner perhaps at the will, and then Justin, or maybe it was Justin Hilliard at the will, but it's not like they were spread out, with the defenses that they were playing, and sometimes it's hard to tell exactly who was playing what.
And then sometimes Pete Werner was in the middle, which would be the Mike.
See, there you go.
And Brian Day talked about the fact that they're kind of looking at him in some different spots, maybe moving him inside. So, if it's Pete Werner at the will, if it's Pete Werner at the will and Tough Borland at the Mike, and then Hilliard at the Sam, like that, sure, maybe. Yeah. But with Baron Browning not out there, like, you never know exactly how much to read into any of that.
Yeah, and we'll see. And then the younger guys, I keep calling them younger guys, Kayvon Pope, Taraja Mitchell, Dallas Gant are now juniors. They're upperclassmen. There's so many of them. Didn't see Craig Young out there for much of it, and he was not listed on the availability report, so it's obviously something minor. The secondary, no Josh Proctor. Marcus Hooker was playing quite a bit of safety. Mm-hmm. Court Williams was back as a deep safety for a lot of that as well, which...
Yeah, that's not where I expected him to be.
No, and that's tells you all you need to know about spring football.
Exactly, yeah.
I very much doubt he will be a deep safety for the Buckeyes this year, but no reason, I guess, not to, get him out there and see what you can do and just get some experience, because if you're the projected bullet and really that the linebackers are doing that and you are more of a safety, go play safety, son.
Yeah.
Get him out there and see what happens and see how he holds up.
Yeah, Marcus Hooker, I had a couple like, oh, look at Marcus Hooker kind of moments. He had an interception he picked off, I think might have been Justin Fields. But it was like a real nice read and jumped a route, read the quarterback and jumped the route and would have been a pick six in a game. He was, I don't expect him to be the starter back there when Josh Proctor's back, but he all of a sudden was like, okay, there's maybe is another viable option back there.
Yeah, and then you still got like Ronnie Hickman, who, at some point we'll get to see. Bryson Shaw played. Is he in 17 now?
He's in 17 now. That's true. He
was playing over the slot some.
Yes, he was. Yeah, he was playing like a slot corner at times. Maybe that's kind of like the bullet spot, because he's still listed as a safety, but he's still listed as number 38 on the. So the listings may be less accurate than you might hope.
Ryan Watts, the freshman corner, who is a 6'3" corner, is a big dude. Like, he's as noticeably large.
He is
as
not
a human being.
Yeah, he is not a quote unquote 6'3" corner. He looks like a 6'3" corner. I was impressed with him. Just watching drills. He looked like he might have been a little ahead of some of the other freshmen.
He had an interception as well.
Yeah. He was, of the guys on defense, like the true freshmen on defense, he might have been the guy who I kind of went, yeah, all right.
Because he's wearing 16, and I didn't realize at first who he was, and I got there, and I'm like, why is this linebacker playing press coverage? It's like, holy crap, that's Ryan Watts. That dude is big. Because I remember covering Tyvis Powell as a true freshman. Was a big receiver, or a big corner, but he was also skinny. Like, Ryan Watts doesn't look like, he looks like he's been around, and we'll see if he can handle it. But he stands out, and that's something when your first spring practice. That's not a bad thing. And when I remember Tyus Powell standing out, it was because Kerry Combs was just tearing him up.
Yeah.
There was none of that. And maybe that's Combs learning. Even though we were told not to report what any of the coaches said.
Yeah.
He wasn't really killing anybody today.
No.
Although we can't talk about it.
Yeah. What you saw with Kerry Combs today was someone would make a mistake and you saw certain guys running through drills twice in a row. It was like, okay, you didn't do that right. Okay, hey, you have to, when you're looking at the receiver, look at this, and that's going to tell you where they're going to go. And just, it was teaching, it wasn't yelling, which is good. That's what you're looking for.
I only learned from being yelled at.
That explains a lot of things, actually.
Shaun Wade was out there a little bit, but again, he's not full go or not on call to be full go. Legend Cavazos, I saw him. Sometimes he was in the slot. Other times he was out wide. And Cameron Brown, we did not see correct. Seven Banks was out there with the ones. And really, Day said that those three corners, Shaun Wade and Cameron Brown, Seven Banks, somebody's going to have to possibly be the slot from that three. Because it's going to be your best three. And that's what we've been saying all along.
Right.
But it can't be Shaun Wade because that's...
Right. The whole point of him coming back was that he was playing outside.
So it's Cameron Brown or it's Seven Banks. And you figure it out from there. Maybe it's both of them. And again, we won't know that until game 1, I'm guessing, because, who knows what we'll see. We won't see hardly anything in the fall.
No.
And they'll tell us even less. We'll have to get it from the players. So be like, so Cameron, who's doing this? Oh, we're all doing it. It's all going real well. I think we feel good about what we have. Like, well, can you give us any information that is actual information? And just that we're all, like, what? You're on what?
And that's how they learn. You yell at them.
Tell me.
We saw Marcus Williamson a good bit in the slot today. We saw Tyreek Johnson, a lot more of him than we had seen before. Johnson looked okay on the outside. I mean, that's kind of the fourth name that you kind of wonder about as potentially an outside guy. Just as this being his third year, you figure he's got to be ahead of some of the true freshmen out there. Williamson in the slot. It'll be interesting to see if he can stay healthy, get on the field, and do it this year.
He seemed comfortable. He wasn't. Some guys stand out because they're getting beat.
Yeah.
I didn't. Most of the guys getting beat, I think, were walk-ons.
Yeah,
which is promising.
Yeah, I mean that's it's promising for the defense.
Exactly.
The bad news is the offense can't beat the first team. That's
well, and then if guys keep getting beat deep, it's like, well, where's that free safety?
Yeah.
Where's that deep help?
I'm just scrolling through my list of notes. They continue to have this is something that they did last year. When there's a turnover, you got to go run a lap around the field. So
the quarterback threw an interception and had to take a lap.
Watch your quarterback take a lap.
We won't tell you which one.
Yep.
But his initials, no, maybe he doesn't go by initials.
So Devon Hamilton at practice today. That was exciting.
Oh, really? Good.
Yeah. Marvin Harrison, who's the NFL outstanding
Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer, I think. So. Yeah. Hall of Fame wide receiver. He's there. His son, Marvin Harrison Jr., is a 2021 commit. So
Ryan Day said he talked about a 5-day high school spring period practice that he proposed.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard about that. 5 days. Hopefully, he said hopefully it gets passed. They'll vote on it, and then I don't know exactly, like 5 days over a 2-week period or, a 1-week period or 10-day period, who knows. But just to get the development of the players, help that out. See, I think because he mentioned that when he was talking about the receivers and how advanced receivers are nowadays from all of the 7-on-7 stuff. And if you can make Ohio high school players better as the Ohio State head coach, you'd be doing yourself a disservice. And it's something that Urban Meyer would talk about, how Ohio players develop later, which is one of the reasons he hates the advanced calendar, the recruiting calendar, because you don't even get to see players as seniors.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think just the state-to-state difference in guys. I mean, that's something Mickey Marotti talked about in the spring. Like certain guys from certain programs in certain areas are ahead of where others are in terms of weight training and that kind of stuff. But, you always, like Texas produces so many more quarterbacks than Ohio does. And part of that is so much 7-on-7 down in Texas that the quarterbacks have so much more time to work on those games in, sort of structured environments. I mean, 7-on-7 is, of limited value in some ways, but
they also have wide open offenses in Texas, it seems like, or that's where the quarterbacks end up. That's where that's where they travel to, and that's where they transfer to. That's where they end up. And in Ohio, there's a lot of, we're going to run the veer.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are an option team.
Yes.
And, so that's that. I think the most important thing that Ryan Day said today, and I quote, "It's just day one."
It is just day one. And that's,
so, when you hear people talking about this lineup, the starters are this and this is that.
Yeah.
Justin Fields is a starter, and the starters from last year are starters, but don't get too hung up on like Paris Johnson and Nicholas Petit-Frere are mixing in with the ones, because I don't really think that's the way it is. And
but by the time they're showing you anything really meaningful, we're not invited anymore. So
exactly. So I think that'll do it, Tom. You got anything else?
The only other note I have in here is one of the drills for the defensive line. They were had trash cans, upside down trash cans, standing in for the place of offensive linemen, which I think they call their Houston Astros formation.
And did they bang on those trash cans?
They did
repeatedly,
and then they were sliding past.
Oh,
so
there you go.
That's how you
there you go.
Yeah.
All right, I think we'll call it a day. That's practice one. We'll be back here Wednesday. We won't see practice, but we will talk to Tom, the
football
players who play the positions of
football,
tight end, and linebackers, maybe.
Coach Kevin Wilson and the tight ends, and Coach Al Washington and the linebackers available for interviews.
Just like I told you.
Yep.
Without any question in my voice.
Extremely assertive, as always.
Well, this is just my normal voice. So maybe we will record after that if we have time.
Maybe. That's the plan.
That's all right. So we want to thank you all for listening. Check out everything at theozone.net, because spring ball is here and we've got content. So go there and check out the rest of the shows on the Ozone Radio Network with the Buckeye Sloopcast Mondays and Fridays. I assume the Silver Bullets are going to be coming back soon now with the with spring ball underway. And of course, now we might be at a two a week situation here while camp is going on. So thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you later.
We could steal a car and leave tonight. Des Moines to